One of the most important things in the energy transition is the feeling of ownership. And I feel sometimes this is what young people struggle to feel.
Welcome back to Energetic, the podcast that shines light on the people powering the energy transition. Today's episode is a bit special. It's about frustration, vision, and a very bold, why not us moment. I'm joined today by Federico Barbieri and Carlotta Ferri, President and Vice-President of EYEN, the European Youth Energy Network. They are part of a growing force of young changemakers who decided that if no one was creating a real space for youth in Europe's energy policy, then they would. EYEN's journey started back in 2019 when Federico, along with colleagues Luciana and Miguel, attended the Clean Energy Ministerial event in Canada. There, they saw the limits of youth engagement firsthand, invited to the event, but excluded from the key rooms where decisions were being made. It was quite a wake-up call and also a beginning. Since then, EYEN has gone from an idea to an international organization. They've launched the European Youth Energy Forum, collaborated with the European Commission, and earned recognition from the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. But it hasn't been a straight line, because building a movement, especially as young people in a field often dominated by established voices, comes with its shares of challenges. So in this conversation, I wanted to understand, what does it take to move from tokenism to influence, from frustration to structural change? And perhaps more importantly, can we, all of us working in energy, learn from the way youth are organizing themselves? So Federico and Carlotta, welcome to Energetic. Let's go back to where it started. Federico, you were in Vancouver back in 2019 during this Clean Energy Ministerial meeting, and you realized youth voices weren't being heard. So how was it, and how did you decide to take action?
Well, thank you, Marine. So I would like to try to think about how your first international energy conference was. And I assume it was overwhelming for everyone. And this was also what I felt in that moment. And if on one side, it was great to have an opportunity to participate on an international conference. On the other side, it was quite difficult to be engaged in a meaningful way. And mostly because there was one big problem. There was a lack of coordination among youth, among European youth. So even though there were a lot of European youth at that conference, we were quite caught in a very individualistic approach.
You had been selected, like handpicked, right?
We were handpicked, and this was one of the first youth space created in a conference. So it was the first time that we were trying to engage young people within this space. So it was a lot of trial and error. So I wouldn't really blame any organizer about the fact, okay, not all youth were involved, but simply because they didn't really know to whom to reach out to. And then after that, especially, if there is no association, talking from the institution side, if there is no association I can reach out with, how can I coordinate with young people rather than going one by one, which is very ineffective.
So you felt quite the nudge to do something, right?
Yeah, indeed, because it's about solving the problem for both people, for young people that needs to be guided, and also for the institution that need to have a channel to connect with young people.
So you were with Luciana and Miguel, and you gathered during the meeting, and you realized that there was a gap, right?
There were like 50 from all over the world, and we're like 3 people from Europe, which was myself, Miguel, and Luciana. And that we realized that there was a lack of coordination among us. And as a consequence, it was very hard for institutions or for policymakers to effectively engage in a constructive way rather than individually. So after that, we went back to Europe. That to tell the story, we were sitting in a bar and we were doing like brainstorming with post-its just outside of the European Commission. And in that moment, we really shaped the first pillars of EYEN. And so after that, it gave a bit the momentum to create something in Europe as well.
And I mean, building a movement, it's not easy, and you must have been feeling very lonely, but you were, as you said, you were invited by already organized initiative, right? So you saw that something was possible, that something was already happening. But at the same time, I mean, since you are in Europe, you could see that there were some, let's say, specific challenge to Europe, starting perhaps with the language. So what were some kind of the big challenge that in the very early days of EYEN, and how did you push through them? And Carlotta, I understand that you joined a little later, so maybe you also have like an understanding of the challenge and like something that you noticed when you arrived. But let's start with Federico.
Yeah, and then I can destroy what he says afterwards.
Absolutely.
And basically the early on the challenges, which, I mean, it's the challenges that all entrepreneurs, all people that want to create something from zero go through. And being youth, I think sometimes it gives you a bit of extra challenge, but also extra opportunities. And we will get to that later. But the first challenge is legal. Like, we have decided to register ourselves in Belgium, also strategically. And establishing an organization in Belgium is a nightmare. It takes time, lots of money.
Yes.
So, but it's a necessary path. And here I believe that more guidance would be good, especially for young people, for youth organization in all member states to establish their own organization. The second one was building trust. Of course, there were other existing organizations in Europe, youth organization. It's also learning from Energy Traders Europe, which is also where I work. Instead of creating another network of individuals, let's create a network of organizations. So our member are local and national youth organizations.
Okay.
And then the last problem was funding. So we have decided not to take membership fees. So our members don't pay anything. Our volunteers don't pay anything, which of course put a lot of pressure on our budget at the beginning. But we believe this is important to ensure that there is no barrier for a youth engagement. So funding through some grants, through some prizes that we won. At the beginning was quite tricky, but we managed to survive the first years. And I believe now we are thriving. But Carlotta now will explain what is currently keeping us busy.
Yeah, so Carlotta, what did you see when you first joined?
I joined EYEN relatively early, but I was not in the board. So I joined the board, I think, 1 or 1.5 years after the creation of the organization. I was before in one of the first youth association that joined EYEN. And then I liked it so much that I decided to do the job. No, well, so far so good. What Federico told you, it was, let's say, the basic pillars, the things that you need to do when you start. And we were full of ideas. We really wanted to rock the world and then face the reality. And I think there were two very big challenges that we faced, not at the very beginning, but once we actually grew. And the first one was our strategy, like long-term strategy. Okay, yeah, we have a very big objective, which is important. We see that we identified the right gap. We are filling it. But, okay, how do we make sure that this idea that we created with a lot of enthusiasm can thrive for very long? And initially, EYEN started as an advocacy organization. So we wanted initially to just say to decision makers, look, youth is here. We can contribute in this way, involve us in a meaningful way, support youth organization in being more engaged. And the fun part is that we succeeded quite early in being heard, or at least noticed. And then a lot of decision makers or institutions were like, okay, that's great what you're saying. What does youth say then? And we want to involve you. Who should we involve? And we realized that not only the voice of youth should have been brought forward by EYEN, but that there was also a lack of approach on how to fill these spaces that we were creating for young people to participate.
Yeah.
So we started a very long iteration process of having long-term strategy for the organization. And I think we all had in the board the same idea on how we wanted to see the future. It was really difficult to make it concrete. So it was quite a collective effort and a lot of learn by doing. It took us almost 2 years to finalize the strategy, which we are actually launching very soon. We're so proud of it. And then the second problem is, okay, great. We have members. We have as members youth organizations, so not individuals. But how can we create a network that advocates for so many different opinions, so many different ambitions? Because youth organizations are focused on very specific things. So how do you bring it together and create a community that is moving in the right direction in an harmonious way? Well, that was also a very big challenge. And we also, we're still working on that in make sure that our members can engage without taking too much of their resources, and also realizing what our members were in need for. Because at the beginning, maybe we assumed a lot. We assumed young people wanted to go to policymakers and say, we need this, we need that. But in reality, we're even more behind. Young people and are already quite well organized in organizations that are active on local level, but they need a springboard to expand their ambition, to realize them. So in EYEN, we realized we also needed to create this, not only springboard, but maybe a ladder to bring them higher in their development. And we are still working a lot on that. And that has become one of the biggest pillars of our organization, something that we thought was quite straightforward. Became one of the biggest challenge once we grew up.
Yeah, that's really interesting because in the definition of youth, just outside it, because it's until 35 years old, and it means a lot. It means the people who are ending high school, maybe the one who are starting university, the one who are not in university, or let's say post-primary levels of studying, etc. They are also the people who are starting working, but also the people who are, let's say, young parents. So it means a lot. And I mean, let's say that the years between 18 and 35, you're a totally different person, right? You have like you almost double in age. So it can mean so many things for so many people with so many different backgrounds. And if you are in policy making, it's a completely different life as if you're, let's say, in an electrician from the countryside, from the Italian countryside. It's a very different experience. But at the same time, as you said, if you are somebody who's been working in EU policy making in the energy sector, in a way, you also have a lot in common with another young person. That you need that springboard to happen. And there is another thing that I found incredibly relevant is that we talk a lot about the energy transition, how to build it, the 4 Ds of the energy transition, decarbonization, decentralization, digitalization, and democratization. But at the same time, we are kind of revolutionizing the system, right?
Yeah.
But the question I always come back to is, for whom are we designing this system, right? Because if you're already, let's say, 50 and so on, maybe you're a little lost. So are you building it for somebody who's like young now and who will not be so young in 2050, right? So is it like, I mean, those questions also need to evolve. And it means also that your database, your audience, the people you want to put on this springboard or ladder, they are also evolving, and they are, I mean, within your team, you have young millennials and you also have Gen Zs, right? So that's incredibly diverse.
Yeah, the world is changing at a way faster rhythm than before, probably. Yes, we can see that.
Yeah. And maybe something that an approach that could be changed is like not how the future system will work for everyone, but how can we build the current system and how can we make the current system more accessible to everyone? Because one of the most important things in the energy transition is the feeling of ownership. And I feel sometimes this is what young people struggle to feel. They don't feel ownership because this ownership is rarely given to them, from the policy making to the technical part. So this is something that we mentioned about the different type of youth. I mean, one of the misconceptions is that youth is just one type of person and is just maybe just activist. And sometimes I feel one of our messages, okay, look, you can be very diverse, but first and foremost, every person ever can contribute in a specific way to the energy transition. I say maybe our vision is, okay, we really want to give the space and to give the right tools so that every different type of youth can have an impact in the way they want, but more a bit of the long term. How do we see the energy transition working together with everyone?
Yeah, not to forget the intergenerational trust and dialogue that we want to create. We don't believe that senior citizens or youth are the only solution for the energy transition. We think that in the collaboration is the key for success. Eventually, younger people are those that maybe might be more affected by the decisions that are taken today. It seems quite straightforward and fair to me that they are involved in the decision-making process in shaping this vision of the world, in this case of the energy transition that we have. But on the other side, we know that they cannot do it on their own. They might lack the tools, but they might also lack the experience and like practical knowledge, and also many characteristics that instead are necessary are necessary to be added to the meat. And that's what senior citizens can bring. Like they are the one that can bring the change forward with their experience, with their knowledge, with what they have seen in the past and how they also feel shaping the future. So I think we both have to bring forward our role and what we can bring to the table. But currently unfortunately it is that the younger generation are kept out of many decisions, and that for several reasons. We are told them they need to wait for their turn. They're told them, you don't have enough experience. I'm sure everyone heard it. Rejection for a job. And yes, and I think instead there is a space also for young people. There's a lot of space for young people that needs to be filled in decision making, especially for something as big as the energy transition, where humankind wants to endeavor one of the biggest transformation that have been in history.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And really one of the pillars of the energy transition is said to be democratization. And if we think about what it means, doing it with the people, not only for the people. So there is this idea that really you need to get people on board to shape it in a way that makes more sense, that is more sustainable, more resilient, that responds to today's challenge and tomorrow's needs as well. So having different voices, different perspective is incredibly relevant and matters so much. But was there really during this process, because you said that you will soon launch this strategy, but you already started almost 6 years ago, which is, you're not that young anymore. You're entering elementary school in most countries, right? So anyway, was there a moment, guys, where you thought, oh, wow, this is actually working? Was there this kind of moment where you realized that you were having the impact you imagined you could have, but only dreamed of having?
Yeah. So, it takes time. I remember that also in 2020 we had COVID, so we had to move back to basically only online interactions. So, of course, that was another challenge that I didn't mention. But actually, we are 3 years old, legally speaking. So in these 3 years...
He always plays down his age.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I always try to look younger.
And Federico, you were starting to get older, otherwise you wouldn't be playing with this.
Yeah. What matters is how you feel inside, as I say. And no, but
my dad says that you don't age, you just are surrounded. You have just been younger for more time than other people.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of nice moments. Then we're like, wow, this is amazing. This is the best idea. There are other moments in which you were thinking, oh no, this will collapse tomorrow. We're not going to survive. We're going to go bankrupt. But yeah, so it's been a roller coaster. But one moment that I think is in one of the key milestones of EYEN was our first edition of the European Youth Energy Forum, which was in 2022. And that marked the first day in which we actually managed to get sponsorship to organize an event and to cover expenses for 50 people, which we trained and which we brought in person to this event. And just the fact of receiving this sponsorship means that somebody was trusting us, somebody was trusting the idea. And on that day, we realized we were born as a network. We thought we wanted to do advocacy, but on that day, we just say we can do much more. We are more than just a network. We are more just an advocacy party. We can actually create projects and implement them. And now we say we are upgrading our definition. We like to call ourselves a think tank because there's more aligned with what we want to do in the future. But no spoilers for the moment. I just say it's my best moment.
Strategy.
Yeah.
Oh, spoiler. I love spoilers. We have a spoiler on energetic, right? So how did it happen that you got some funding? Because I'm sure some people will listen to the podcast and like, I mean, it's too much suspense. You really need to tell us more.
Okay. Very quickly, I think you really need to bring together two different organizations. Like what we see that sometimes the way to unlock funding is when you have a young professional in another association or in an energy company that bridges the gap between the civil society and the private and the public sector. So this person has basically one feet in two shoes, can understand what is the need on the youth part, what is the need on the public-private part, and then we can create something that have an impact for both. So I think this may be something I would really encourage, like try to create something together with an external organization. When you want to launch your first event, your first project, will you go there, get a partnership, get support from our side. And this is something that maybe if I went back, I will do more when we were launching our first projects.
Yeah, that's incredibly that's so true because I mean, from the moment an organization or some people are actually taking your project, like embracing your project, first, you know that it's real. And second, it gives it so much kind of legitimacy. They become your advocate. You don't have to advocate for it anymore, right? So it becomes so real, as you just said.
Yeah, and I wanted to give a name to this person that bridged the first European Youth Energy Forum. I hope Thiago is listening to us and we send a lot of love to him. He's now in another organization bringing great ideas in Portugal. It's in Young Energy Leaders, right?
Future Energy Portugal.
Future Energy Portugal.
Which is also one of our members.
Okay.
Yes. Can I add also my eye-opening moment? Because I was a bit, I think I'm, from a personality point of view, a bit more critical of what we do all the time than Federico. I'm always thinking, oh no, we should have done this better. Oh no, this is not going to look good at the end. But we were invited at the Citizens Energy Forum in 2022 by the European Commission. Well, we were invited previous edition, but this time, for the first time, we were in the panel, opening speakers. And I remember I mentioned to the panelists that, yes, like young people are always pointed out, okay, how can young people contribute to the energy transition? And I told them, we have quite our hands tied in many parts of the energy transition. How can we contribute if we don't have financial, political, or even educational means to be proactive energy consumers, to be proactive citizens in the energy transition? And I remember a quite high-level person that I will not mention because I'm not sure if she would like, but she came to me and she said, wow, your intervention was really eye-opening. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is people that have been doing this job for 20 years and I never thought that young people didn't have enough resources to participate more proactively in the energy transition. And then I realized, wow, EYEN really needs to exist. That was my moment.
I totally relate to that as well. Also, because when I started in policy making and discussions and so on, I was so young. I was like 25 or 27. And I was the only person under 40 in the room. I still am. And I was the only woman. So for me, the most striking part was like being the only young woman in the room. And where do you start from there? And I wish I had at the time EYEN to kind of also make me believe a little bit more in myself, because there are maybe some struggles or some doubts or some kind of self-doubts and this kind of nasty talking that I may have done to myself that maybe I would have had overcome if I had found an organization that was kind of advocating a little bit more for me to have my seat at the table, that my seat was legitimate enough. So I think it's really, the work that you do is extremely empowering. But let's get a little bit into who is EYEN, like how many members you have, like you said you had a lot of organizations, local organization, but you also have a board. So can you explain that a little bit and also explain a little bit the kind of services that this umbrella organization offers, think tank offers?
First of all, I think we should put on the website what Marin said. I wish EYEN existed when I was younger. And maybe I can start with the network. Maybe Carlotta, you can complement what we're trying to do for the network, because it's a big work that we are carrying for us. So at the moment we have 25 member organizations, 8 in the making. They are from 12 different countries. By European, we mean the European continent, not just the European Union. For example, we have a member from Montenegro. Of course, we like to go beyond the boundaries of the political boundaries, let's say. And our organization per se have 60 volunteers, around 60 volunteers. Of course, we have the board, we have the secretariat, and we have the project. This is typical structure of an association. And then if you put all our members together, we can count more than 2,000 volunteers. And this meaning like active people. So this is a huge group of people that can actually have an impact on the transition, on any transition, if they are given the right tools. So this is a bit what we're trying to do is, okay, we're building a network, but at the same time, how do we make our network more connected, and how can we be more of help for our members? And for this question, I think Carlotta is the best person to answer.
As I was mentioning before, we started as the European Youth Energy Network, and now probably it will be European Youth Energy, a lot of names, because we do a lot of things. When we realized that the advocacy gap was not the only gap that we had to fill, we started actually a lot of different projects for youth done by youth. So the European Youth Energy Forum, which I might call AYEF, the acronym without thinking about it. AYEF was one of the first projects that we launched, but there's much more going on now in the organization. And that's why we think the think tank definition of our work fits way better the objective that we have and the activity that we carry on. When I say project done by youth for youth, is because when EYEN or one of our members or any youth that is listening today, you identify a gap for youth empowerment in the energy transition, we are the place to go to develop your project. We have launched already several initiatives that then correspond to a specific task force in our organization. We have the Young Energy Consumer Task Force that takes care of energy poverty across youth, across young energy consumers, but also how the next generation of energy consumers can become more proactive in the energy transition. We have the ETCC, which is the Energy Transition Career Compass. It's a great tool for young people that want to enter the energy transition career to inform themselves what education, what professional path they can take, and get examples from other people that participated in this project. We have great ambitions for this, so stay tuned for more. Yeah, I mean, I can go on with a lot of other things that we do. We have also some new projects boiling up. We are, of course, participating at COP, so there's also a task force taking care of that. So
I think I met Federico for the first time at COP back in 2023 in Dubai. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think you saw that I was coming and then you contacted me and then we had great chats. And that was really great because I was also accompanied by other youth organization. Dimitri, if you hear me, from Burkina Faso. And he, I think I put you in touch as well because, I mean, it's really about building the present and the future together and in the globalized and warming world.
Maybe just to complement. So I think what we're trying to do here is really have a bottom-up approach. Really trying to develop a youth for youth, project youth for youth. But it doesn't mean that it's sufficient. We should have bottom-up and top-bottom approach. And sometimes that's why also as part of our activities, we really want to support initiatives that are launched by institutions, by companies that really support young professionals. So for example, we really praise the European Commission within the European Stable Energy Week. They created the Youth Energy Day, which then evolved into the Young Energy Ambassadors. Also, we work closely with IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency. They were one of the first intergovernmental agencies to create a youth program. Then also with the Flores Growth Regulation, which you know as well, they have a Luce Award, which really want to have a spotlight on emerging talents and especially women. So if you know any project that supports youth or young professionals in energy, we love to share this opportunity because we believe that everybody should have free equal access to these opportunities. And when we can, of course, we provide also advice and how these projects can be more impactful.
Yeah, and what I really like in the project and the vision you defend is how the principles of gender equity and the, let's say, space for everyone, whatever their background, whatever, if they have a disability, if they have if they are different in any way, how much you embrace this as completely part of what you advocate for. And it's not only because you are under 35, but it's also because you may have been underrepresented until now. And it's really part of your DNA. And I think it's really super inspiring for the organizations that, okay, maybe the main focus will be young people, but actually equity is really part of your DNA. And we had many conversations, Federico, where you said, oh, I shouldn't be talking about that because I'm a man, right? And it's complete generational shift to hear a young man saying something like that. And I really appreciate that, I must say.
I feel sometimes what we must not forget is that whenever somebody is not represented, that voice never goes across the room. And I think that's why we had this reaction. Carlotta received this reaction because until 2022, there was no youth participation in the Citizen Energy Forum. And as soon somebody comes in, youth, but also that have something to say, because it's something that we have worked on, it's something that we have researched. We're not just going there and saying very basic things that everybody knows, because a bit the work of the association is to bring on the table new things, new data, new research, so that we can take more well-informed decisions. And this applies to any part of society, to youth, to women, and of course, some groups were more excluded in the past. And so I think this is a bit our role, trying to bring in to discussion this group, but without having the presumption of saying, oh, you need to include us just because we're youth.
Yeah.
We really want you to include us if you believe that you're bringing additional value to the discussion.
Yeah, you don't want to be the checkbox exercise. You just want to be a box that is being ticked, but really have influence, right, Carlotta?
Yeah.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is as EYEN is indeed that it's really hard to imagine something that does not exist yet. And what we are trying to build, Federico mentioned a very little amount of a lot of initiatives that are a bit more top-down on engagement of young people. There's also the EU Youth Test launched by the youth, I think it was a youth forum, right?
Yep.
Yes. And basically it was agreed upon all European institutions that new policies or opinions, depending what's their role is, will be shared among young people to be reviewed and to engage them. And I think it's a great solution. It's a great pilot, a great middle step. That's always what I say, that these initiatives are just a bridge towards EYEN's vision, which is full inclusion and meaningful inclusion of young people in the decision-making for the energy transition. And, we could also look at many other sectors. So I think that is an extremely important point, and that's why EYEN exists at this moment. When we will reach our mission, paradoxically, we will not be needed anymore. When the world will look like how we wanted, EYEN will not be needed anymore.
And you won't be young anymore.
No, I'm not. I hope I will still be there.
Yeah, you will be young for a longer time, right? So that's the difference.
Yes, exactly.
Of course, it's an hypothetical word. Of course, I believe that you always need somebody to keep those organizations and those governments accountable for maintaining and supporting this project. Talking about top-down,
Yeah.
If we have a top-down, of course, we need to make sure that they're maintained. Of course, in a perfect world, everything will be bottom-up. But in a perfect world, it means that all organizations have the resources they need and financial and human resources knowledge. And that's what Carlotta was mentioning. That's our mission. Where every youth organization knows where they have to go when they want to find out what they want to do with their life, how to switch to a green career. And all entrepreneurs or youth in associations, they have the right resources to launch their project, to launch their organization, to engage more people. That's where we want to go.
You're basically an organization that people join for a limited amount of time, by definition.
Yeah.
by definition, you will always, and you members will always have to be challenged because of the evolution of time and the new people who join and the new questions that are being asked, the new energies that are being brought forward. So it's a moving organization, if we want.
Very right.
We're always chasing, always running against time. I mean, if you actually, and I would like to bring this aspect as well, which is we have many youth organizations local that unfortunately after a certain time they fail maybe to get new people and eventually they die out. And if we were able to give this organization the proper training, the proper resources, this organization will not die out. Because every time a local youth organization dies out, it ties out a connection between the society and the energy transition. So this is something that is very unfortunate. And unfortunately, we are living a fast-pacing world, and youth now, I mean, you cannot expect somebody to be in a youth organization for 20 years, maybe as advisors, yes, but you always need to find new leaders. And I think that's why youth organizations are always challenged.
Yeah, but again, it can be a good thing to be challenged, right? So yeah, we are reaching the end of this really fascinating conversation. I would like to ask you both very quickly. Let's start with Carlotta. So what excites you the most for the years to come? Be it EYEN or other projects?
I'm definitely very excited about the launch of the new strategy in EYEN. As I mentioned, it has been a long journey for us. And I think we have now the right tools to engage our members, also in the decision-making body of the organization. But that's what I have to say as a board member. As a very big fan of one of our projects, it's really dear to my heart. We are launching very soon the first ever quantitative survey on youth energy poverty in Europe. It has also been quite a long journey to set up this project and to be so close to its launch I think in June, if everything goes well. I am so looking forward to see the results and but most of all, see what we can do with that. We have created a huge consortium of partners, university, regulatory institutions, NGOs that are very excited as well and are working together with us. So
that's great. Federico?
For me, after 3 years legally, 5 years operationally, so that's come the end of my journey at EYEN. I mean, this year is my last year as president. And you've seen your baby being born and growing, and now the baby starts walking. And I think I have this feeling of I need to stay close to the baby, but at the same time, the baby needs to learn how to walk on his own. Yeah. And that's what I'm very excited about. I think we're doing everything we can and really giving the right resources for EYEN to thrive. Yeah. And that's why we're put so much focus on the strategy, on making the organization functioning properly. And I'm just excited to see what people will come up in the next years.
And that's also nice because you will join me on the other side, the kind of... They're not so young anymore.
I was joking with Federico the other day that we should create the European Senior Energy Net afterwards because we will meet.
Wow, why not? Exactly, like the not so young anymore, the formerly young people, energy network,
creative like the name.
Yeah, let's not offend anyone. Okay, thank you so much, Carlotta and Federico, and thank you so much also to Energy Traders Europe for sponsoring this series. A full disclaimer, Federico is also working for Energy Traders Europe, and they've been very supportive of our work and our work together. And yeah, if you're under 35, join EYEN. They are really cool people, and as you could hear, they have plenty of good ideas. And if you are over 35, like me, you can always give them a hand or just get interested in their news. And they are really, they're so happy and eager to learn from us, formerly young people. So yeah, let's get the conversation continue because there is so much ahead of us. Thank you so much, Federico and Carlotta.
Thank you, Verena.
Thank you.